Yikes. I'm Shane. I'm an alcoholic, a nervous alcoholic. My sobriety birthday is Halloween 2021. As you just heard, this is not, it's obviously not my AA story. Didn't start in 2021. I showed up. I started drinking when I was 12 years old. My dad is an alcoholic. I'm a AA Nepo baby, and he was drunk, and he decided to give me the don't drink and drug talk when he was really drunk, and he didn't like my response, and he kicked the shit out of me. I don't know, can you swear? And he kicked the shit out of me, and the next day somebody offered me some drugs, and I was like, well, if I'm going to get my ass kicked, I might as well, see what I got my ass kicked for, and I was off and running, and him and my mom got divorced, and he went to Easy Does It and sobered up. And for any South Enders, it's Wendell, if you remember him. He's got 47 years now, and he's still a dick, but that's a whole different story. And and I was off and running, my mom ended up marrying another guy who was he was a heroin addict, and we grew pot in the house, and my mom would go to the liquor store for me if I asked her, and I didn't have any guardrails whatsoever when it came to drinking and drugging in my house, and I had all the pot I wanted, and my stepdad would give me these little orange pills that would get me high for 6 hours. There's a lot of drugs in my life too, sorry. And he'd buy me, they'd buy me bottles of whiskey, and when I was 16, my mom would give me the car keys and go to the liquor store for me, and I'd run out of money, and I'd break into houses and do all sorts of stuff to get my money. And when I was 19, I was driving down with West Valley Highway down here, and I went through an orange light and hit a car and got a DWI and had got arrested and was in the Kent City jail there, and I did the one thing I swear I was never going to do, and I called my dad because he'd gotten out of a whole bunch of DWIs. It was a whole different time back then, and I called him. He came and got me, and we went to Mr. Ed's. If any of you South Enders remember him, and we went to Mr. Ed's, and and my dad was like, talking to me, and he was like, maybe I think you're an alcoholic, and he was being a total jerk about it, but like, I think, maybe you're an alcoholic, and I was pissed off and pretty drunk, but what happened was that I couldn't deny that he was an alcoholic. I knew he was a drunk because I'd had to live through his crap, and his whining and crying and his stupid, miserable life. And I knew without a doubt that he was an alcoholic. And what happened was when he was talking to me, I realized that I drank just like he did. There was no doubt in my mind that I was just like him. And so I started going to meetings, started going to the Des Moines Midway group, and I'd pop into Easy Does It once in a while, but I wasn't staying sober. And this lady Lonnie she decided that she'd take me up to Fremont, and we took the bus up there, and it was the B1 meeting, and we were sitting up there, and what happened was it was just, some lady was crying, and everybody was all listening to her, and she was sad, and some guy bum up there, Scratch, for a couple people here who would remember him, fucking reached down into his pants and scratched himself and went, "Ah!" And the whole room just started laughing, including the girl who was crying the blues. And I was just like, God, this place is awesome. I felt right at home. And, and then there was this, cute black girl there who had a fucking hole in her pants and her ass was hanging out. And they were like, if you want what we got, keep coming back. And I was like, okay. And, in a couple of days, our kid is going to be 37. We ended up having a baby, and I came back for 12 years. I went to college. I got myself a really good life, and but I didn't really work steps. I kind of did, but and I got cocky, but life was good. I built myself a pretty decent life. And what happened was is that um, I met a girl, and she had a handful of narcotics, and I get really bad headaches. I always have my whole life, and those those narcotics, she finally talked me into taking them to get rid of one of my headaches, and it worked. And then I started taking them all the time, and I decided that I wasn't sober anymore, and I started drinking because it's much easier to go to 7-Eleven or the liquor store than it is to sit in a parking lot and wait for some jerk who's not going to show up for 4 hours. And it's easier, softer way to do that. And what happened was is that girl went away. I left. We moved to Portland, and my kid was living with me, and he moved away back in with his mom. And I came back to Seattle, and I was living in a borrowed car, and was sleeping at the Smoky Point rest stop here and there, and sleeping in this car. And the job I'd gotten out of college was gone. Everything was gone again, and my life was just a goddamn wreck. And I was back out for about 8 years, and I lost it all. And for some reason, I could not stop drinking. I don't know why. I knew what the answer was, and it's Alcoholics Anonymous. And so, I was going to meetings, and I was trying to stay sober, and I ended up with a year of, I'm going to steal somebody's line here, of Percocet speckled sobriety. Where I wasn't drinking, but I was taking narcotics here and there whenever I could get them, and that didn't work either, obviously. And I started drinking once again. And one day I just, my life was once again falling apart. I'd gotten a job, my old job back, and I was about to lose it once again. And so I my new girlfriend had left, and once again I was right back where I was, and everything, I knew where I was headed. I was going to end up living in that goddamn car again, except I had another car, but I was going to live in my car again, and I did not want that. And I had asked this higher power that I still don't understand for some help, and I ended up not drinking for a couple of days. But this time I did it a little bit differently. I got a sponsor, and I started meeting this guy every day, or every Tuesday, at his house, and we were going through the big book and reading the book, and I was doing what he was saying, as much as I didn't want to. I knew that the people he was working with had better lives and seemed happier and seemed stable and had what I wanted. And in order for me to get that, I figured I had to do what these people did. And all my years in AA, I'd always seen that. The people who come in here and work steps and try to be useful and do stuff are the people who end up getting stuff that I want. And the people who come in and fuck around with this thing are the people who don't have what I want. And so I did it. And once again, I got 12 years. This is the second time I had it. I got 12 years once again. And life this time wasn't as fun as the first time around. But I went to work every day, and I got a few material things, and I got a whole new crop of friends. And but I moved to Everett. I moved away from my big support group that I had down in Seattle, and I got really bored. And and then somebody decided to make pot legal, and my girlfriend at the time, there's a real big theme here when it comes to girls. She started taking these little pot caplets or whatever, and my headaches, and I popped one, and after 12 years of not doing anything, one of these little 5 milligram caplets of pot gets you really high. And, so I started popping those things all the time. And once again, I'm not drinking, I'm not sober if I'm doing pot. So off to the liquor store I run. And, 3 years later, my life is just in shambles again, and I'm hating life and I'm miserable. And what I did this time was I called my son's mom, that girl that I met at Fremont, and I talked to her, and all she said to me, I was whining and crying about how miserable my life was, like, we seem to do when we're at the bottom. And all she could say to me was, go to a meeting. And every time I'd, but this, she'd say, go to a meeting. And so I did, and I've been on and off, been going to 18th and Baker because I live right by there. And so I went to 18th and Baker on a Tuesday night. I had a couple days by then, and I just was looking for an excuse not to go back to Alcoholics Anonymous because I didn't want to do it. And but I went anyway, and I was just looking for somebody I hated so I could get all pissed off and leave. And what happened was there were two people there that I knew from before that I actually really liked. These two guys, Dan and Marty, and they were the two people standing in the parking lot when I drove up. And I figured, oh God, this is going to be embarrassing. They're going to be all mean and well, what a loser. But no, they came up and said, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And they welcomed me back. And a couple people in here know him, my friend Sid, who's never on time and hardly ever goes to meetings, showed up and walked in there, and, he showed up. And, for whatever reason, everything fell into place once again. And I've been back, that was Halloween in 2021, and I've been sitting in here ever since, and I got a sponsor, and I went through the book again, and I've been, I got a service position in my district, and I do a couple meetings, and I got a home group, and I'm doing it once again what I think is the correct way. I'm not sponsoring anybody because, I don't know, I did that before. I'm an acquired taste, I really am. If any of you know Wendell, I'm a lot like, I know some people might know him. He is a dick, and I'm a lot like him. So I am an acquired taste. But once you get to know me, you'll like me. But till then, but this Alcoholics Anonymous thing has given me a life that I am so grateful for. I got, my kid likes me. I have a few material things. I have some friends, like Christina over here and Sid, some people that, really actually care about me, and out in the real world, they don't for the most part, and, I had to get rid of my sponsor because I'm running sponsorless right now. I'm looking, but my sponsor, he's smoking weed, and, that ain't sober to me. So I've been looking for somebody else, but that wasn't that long ago, and I'm pretty stable right now. But right now, everything in my life is going really well, and I go to meetings on a regular basis, and I try to be useful, and it's just, looking around the room, I see some of you people I've seen for years and years and years, and it's just preaching to the choir how grateful I am for this thing, even though I haven't stayed sober as long as you guys have. But how much this thing has given me is just unreal, and I wish I could project that and make new people understand how grateful I am that I ran into this thing and that I show up here and just somewhat willing to listen to the message and be receptive to what you guys are offering, because I honestly think that I would be dead in 30 seconds. So thanks for asking. And do I introduce her now, or do I introduce her? Is it break?
Yeah.
Cool. So
Thanks.
anyway, thanks for listening to me.